So today is Wednesday, October 3rd, and I'm actually going to be going through polling from Tuesday, October 2nd, and then in a separate video covering the polling from today. There's actually polling out already for Thursday, and the world doesn't revolve around my time zone, so I understand why, but I'm not going to be covering that until tomorrow, my time, because I'm seeing a lot of important data there, and I don't want to make 3 consecutive videos with all caps headlines because they are covering very important topics, and it can't just be labeled under daily poll analysis because that's not just what it is. Yes, it all lands on one day, but the data here, like we're seeing from West Virginia, North Dakota, and Florida Senate races, Georgia, Florida, Illinois governor races, contested governor races, and Senate races, I definitely need to make that a little bit more prioritized than just saying daily poll analysis, which we probably won't be seeing this entire month, considering that polling data is going to become more rapid and more accurate as we lead into the election season. So right now, today, I guess you could say is Tuesday, October 2nd, because that's the polls we're going to be going over today. So we have some important data from the states of Florida, West Virginia, North Dakota, and the Senate races. In the governor races, we have Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Colorado, and then in the House races, Ohio, Virginia, Oklahoma, and then 2 polls, the generic congressional vote, and then the President Trump job approval. So overall, I'm going to try to make this pretty quick. We're going to start off with the state of Florida. So the lead for Bill Nelson has narrowed down from where it was before, but he's still leading. Rick Scott used to be leading consistently in every poll, or it was a tie. There was a point in time where Bill Nelson led by 7%. That probably wasn't the most realistic number, but Bill Nelson is now leading by 1%. Not the worst thing either. Being a Democratic incumbent leading is still good news. I mean, a win is a win regardless of the margin, but also it is a warning sign. There are a number of undecided voters that weren't there before. If we click on the Florida Senate race, you can see where Rick Scott led before, and it was at a point where voters weren't too undecided. There was a point where, it was 41 to 42, but in the ties, it was 49 to 49, 47 to 47. Some of these polls, 47 to 44. So, yeah, some of them did deviate and go down to 39 to 45. But overall, in the most recent polls, they are showing less undecided voters, like the one that showed Nelson leading by 7 by Quinnipiac, 53 to 46, leaving 1% of undecided voters. We're probably going to see a little bit more than that, even up into the election day. But for right now, this most recent poll definitely showing the most amount of undecided voters out of all the recent ones that show Bill Nelson leading or show a tie. So, very interesting numbers there. The state of Florida right now shows Bill Nelson leading by 2%. So if you actually look down here at the overall average late June, beginning of July, Rick Scott took the lead. So Bill Nelson led, then all of a sudden Scott went up. And then he consistently led all the way up until more recent polling data has come out in September. September 24th was the last time Scott led. Then by September 25th, Nelson led by 1.1%. And then he led by 2.3%, then down to 2. So right now, Florida, a very contested race, but Bill Nelson definitely gaining back voters than where he was before because he was currently on a trend where he was going down, and it didn't seem like he could recover that well, but he has. So very interesting from the state of Florida. In the state of West Virginia, Joe Manchin leading by 8%. That's very good for Democrats. Usually people expect this race definitely to narrow down, especially being a state like West Virginia. President Trump bringing attention to it. I mean, it's his highest approved state in terms of his approval rating. But Joe Manchin is also approved of, and they also aren't the first people to just vote down the ballot. Yes, they'll vote Republican on the national vote. That's it. They'll elect a Democratic governor, as they did in 2016, at the same time as electing a Republican president. So right now, if we look at the numbers here, Joe Manchin leads by 9.4% on average, and in the most recent poll by 8%. Yes, there are undecided voters. That is given in any type of race, but it's always interesting to see a Democrat lead in a solidly conservative state, and that's exactly what we're seeing here, and the data isn't really changing from what we saw before. North Dakota Senate race. This is the poll that actually moved it from toss-up to leaning GOP, and there's a poll on Thursday, which is tomorrow, but not in my time zone, would be today. If I was in a different part of the world. North Dakota showing the same numbers here from Fox News. So I'm not spoiling too much, but you can pretty much see the general conclusion here. So the North Dakota Senate race, I'm going to avoid clicking on it because I know there's more data from the race here. But Kevin Cramer leads by 10%. 10%. You're not looking at some botched number. That is a double-digit lead for a challenger against an incumbent from the Democratic Party in a Democratic wave year where excitement is at its all-time high. People think this is the most influential election year, even it being a midterm election year, and the Democrat is trailing by 10%, gaining only 41% of the vote. That's huge. Okay, so North Dakota, never really the strong suit for Democrats. There was a point in time where Heidi Heitkamp had a chance. Last poll showed her leading was in February of 2018. So definitely a huge change in terms of the hearts of North Dakota voters from then to now. So Kevin Cramer leads by 10%. Before he led by 4%, then 4%, and now 10%. So that wraps up our Florida, West Virginia, and North Dakota Senate races. Pretty good news in Florida and West Virginia. North Dakota, absolutely not. That may cut off the Democrats' possibility to a majority in 2018, but they possibly could tie the Senate even without the state of North Dakota. But we can move over to the governor's races from the states of Florida, Georgia, Illinois, and Colorado. So Florida, we're going to start off with. Andrew Gillum has now started campaigning with Hillary Clinton. Now, whether or not these numbers are results of it, I would say so. Right now, if we look at Andrew Gillum, he was that upset Bernie-type candidate. I did expect this race to get closer than a 7 to 8% lead for Andrew Gillum. I do think he could narrowly hold this one off in the end of 2018. However, there is a reason why his numbers are narrowing down, and it's not because it's just the candidate. It's with the people he campaigns with. Florida was not too fond of Hillary Clinton in 2016. Although Andrew Gillum did endorse Hillary Clinton before, back in 2016, that wasn't the main point of his campaign. He wasn't saying, I'm with her. He's pretty much talking about Florida voters. But now he's sort of wrapping himself behind a losing candidate from 2016 that isn't too popular in the state of Florida. In fact, the president has a positive approval rating here. So that's pretty good for the GOP there. Ron DeSantis pretty much isn't too popular either in the state of Florida, which is the only reason why he isn't really behind. Because if we look at the factors, sure, it's a Democratic wave year. But we currently have a governor here who is approved of by 18% more than his disapproval rating. We have a president who has a 4% more higher approval rating than his disapproval rating. This is a Republican state from 2016, larger than the margin that Andrew Gillum is leading by right now in the most recent poll. So this race definitely should be getting closer and more in favor of the GOP. But this race definitely has narrowed down to a 1% raise. In the Georgia governor race, we have really not seen any numbers except for +2, +2, +2, or a tie. I don't know why I said that 3 times, but +2 for either candidate or a tie. In fact, if we look at the polls, Kemp +2, Abrams +2, tie, Kemp +2. So when we look at these races, the overall average is Kemp +0.5. Now that may seem a little weird because it is the state of Georgia. By the end of 2018, I do expect this race to narrowly land in the Republican column, but it's always interesting to see a very close race in a pretty Republican state. The highest point I think that the Democrats could possibly get in the state is nearing 48, 49%, only because this is still a Republican state. Yes, this is a Democratic wave year, but what good does a Democratic wave year do in a Republican state? We're not seeing states like Alabama and Mississippi all of a sudden become safe Democratic states because it's a toss-up year. Sorry, a Democratic wave year. We're not seeing that in swing states either. Yes, Florida may be a little bit more inclined to vote for a Democratic candidate because it is a wave year and it's against the president. Now, keep in mind, you have to look at the states individually. Some of them still approve of the president, even though the nation may not. For example, the state of Florida. But completely disregarding that, we can move over to the Illinois governor race. So this race have actually moved from likely Democratic to safe Democratic. With Pritzker leading by 22%, we were not going to see that much of a possibility for a Republican victory here, even with an incumbent. Bruce Rauner, the incumbent from the state of Illinois, right now polling with 27% of the vote. Okay, he won in 2014 mainly because of the anti-Obama wave. Last time, it was pretty much the last 2 weeks of the campaign, and then all of a sudden, Obama's approval ratings dipped, and then the Republicans went up. So Illinois governor race, I've rated as a safe Democratic state, which is flipping from red to blue. So very interesting, Illinois, a very huge possibility for a pickup for the Democratic Party there. In the state of Colorado, Jared Pohl is leading by 7%. Keep in mind, if he was to win, he would be the first openly gay governor. So I guess that would be a milestone in terms of the governor races. But overall, the Colorado governor races, not that contested, to be completely honest with you. With a Democrat leading by 7%, sure, it's not the largest lead, but Hillary Clinton pretty much safely won the state compared to where she lost in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, with the races decided by less than 1% in all 3 of those states compared to a race that Hillary Clinton won by I believe over 5%. It definitely does show good numbers. So right now with Polis leading by 7%, we don't see a huge possibility of a GOP win. It's not completely ruled out. But for right now, the Democrats are definitely leading in the state of Colorado. So we've covered the governor races. Pretty much good news in Florida, in Georgia, in Illinois, and Colorado. And the reason why I say good news in Georgia is because the race is very close. If this is any other type of year, even a presidential election year, or even worse, a Republican wave year for the Democrats, that would be even worse. Brian Kemp leading by 2% isn't the worst thing for the Democratic Party. They definitely could come back leading into the 2018, I guess, ending of the election season. But Gillum leading by 1%, the GOP definitely can bring their numbers up there. Abrams definitely can bring her numbers up there, but we're not seeing it for Rauner in the state of Illinois. With that many undecided voters and only 1.1% need to move to the Democratic side, out of that many undecided voters, it doesn't look too good for the GOP. In the state of Colorado, a number of undecided voters, only 3.1% of them need to go to the Democrats compared to 10.1% of them for the GOP. So very interesting numbers from these governor races. Overall, good news for the Democrats. Can't say too much in the North Dakota Senate race. So that covers our governor races and our Senate races. Now we can move over to our House districts. Ohio's first district, which is a very, I guess, gerrymandered district, the Republican leads by 9%. That's not too unexpected. This is a Democratic wave year, though, so this race could get a little bit more contested than before, but overall, it's expected to go and land in the GOP column. For the Virginia 10th District, Barbara Comstock, I always saw ads against her before back in 2016. Now we're leading into 2018, and she definitely has a huge possibility of losing. She's probably the most vulnerable GOP incumbent in the state of Virginia, probably on the East Coast, probably in almost all of the country except for the state of California. Right now, when we look at this state itself, besides the Pennsylvania districts, because I don't want to count those because they were redistricted, but if based off the districts that were drawn in 2010, Virginia's 10th district definitely going to be a very contested race. I'm not saying it's a blowout for the Democrats, but a 6% lead isn't too bad considering back in 2016. In fact, I think they may have polling data from back in 2016. It was the only contested race. Yeah, Barbara Comstock won by 5.8%. So right now, Wexton plus 9, Wexton plus 6. The lead is narrowing down just a tad bit, but it's always very important to see how a Democrat can win in a GOP district, which this is probably going to be one of the top ones up there. And then the Oklahoma 5th district, people think could get close, and they're right, because it is a only 10% win, whereas before, I don't even think they have it in 2016. Yeah, they don't. It is a contested race compared to the other ones. It is a likely GOP race, but still contested nonetheless. So that wraps up all of our Democrat versus Republican polling besides the generic ballot, which we'll get to in a moment. President Trump approval rating, Quinnipiac disapprove plus 12. Nothing too surprising. And then 2018 generic congressional vote, Democrats lead by 7%. Overall, their average is, let's check in 1 second, 7.7%. So leading into the general election, not too bad whatsoever. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.